a job to do, and he's got to fulfill that mission. To see his hurt will be their greatest ambition. But we will survive in this world of competition, 'cause no matter what they do, they keep on coming through. And no matter what they say, Trade did it every day. Natty Trade rise again through the mystics of tomorrow. Natty Trade rise again. Have no fear, have no sorrow. All in all you see a one is to fight against the Rasta man. So they build their world on great confusion, to force on us the devil's illusion. But the stone the builder refused shall be the head cornerstone. And no matter what game they play, we've got something they can never take away. Something they can never take away. It's the fire, the fire, that's burning down everything. Feel the fire, the fire. Only the birds have their wings. No time to be deceived. Yes, you should know and not believe. Just say this judgment would never be with water. No water can put out this fire, this fire, this fire, this fire. I got you, so ride not to ride. Go there, Teddy, go there. Now the fire is out of control. Panic in the city, wicked weeping for their souls. Everywhere the fire is burning, destroying and melting their gold, destroying and wasting their souls. So ride, natty, ride. Got that dready, got that. Now the people gather on the beach, and the leader tried to make a speech, but the dread again tell them that it's too late. Fire is burning, men, pull your own way. Fire is burning, men, pull your own way. Natty dread rise again. Natty dread rise again. Oh, got that dready, got that. All right, natty ride. Rise again. Got that dready, got that. Riding through the storm, and we're riding through the calm. All right, natty ride.
Welcome to another edition of Voice of the Diaspora. PPP attack on blacks in Guyana. Political activist, owner of Benschop Radio, 107.1 FM, and host of Straight Up with Mark Benschop. The man himself, Mark Anthony Benschop, is live here in studio with me. We will be talking about the PPP and Stabroek News attacks on senior magistrate Leron Daly. Also, Government Minister Charles Ramson's alleged racial discrimination against Ian Ivor Thorne, leading to his untimely resignation as administrator of Burroughs School of Art. Guyana Police Force fake warrant allegedly signed by Magistrate Wonder Fortune. This and more as the man of the moment, long-standing political activist, freedom fighter, and one of Guyana's finest radio hosts, Mark Benschop, joins me now. Mark Anthony Benschop, you are live. I think he's just stepped away from the camera, and so we will wait a second for him. we do apologize for that. He's just moved away. He's literally just moved away. And so we will take a short break and wait for him to return. Mark Benschop is here with us live on Voice of the Diaspora. Welcome back, viewers. Mark just stepped away. He's here with us now. Mark Benschop, welcome, the Voice of the Diaspora. We thought you did a runner like some in the PPP, but you are back, and you will always be here.
Not only some in the PPP run, I guess some in the opposition has run too. But if it's one thing, I'm not a running man. I stay and I fight the battle, regardless of the opponent. So don't put me in a category of running. Remember 5 years at Camp Street, I didn't run. Your friend ran, not me. Your friend ran.
My friend,
Philip Bino, good morning or good afternoon if he's watching. He ran and he hid, not me.
Mark, so many people have tuned in already. I want to welcome you to Voice of the Diaspora. It's always a pleasure to have you on here, and we will be having this discourse. So much is happening in Guyana. So much is happening, Mark. Every day is something else by the regime. Some abomination, some atrocity, some terrible happenings, to the ordinary people of Guyana. You have been there with your fingers on the pulse of this evil regime's machinations. And you have received national attention in your response to Anil Nandalal, the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, and Barajagdio, along with Stabroek News, one of our nation's main newspapers, that the attack on senior magistrate Liron Daly. I want you to begin by telling us what is happening there. Give us a backdrop of why these attacks are coming. Let our viewers hear from you. Mark Benschop here.
Yeah. Again, thank you so much for this opportunity, Norman, and I wish you and your platform the best. 2025 is yet to come, and we can expect the best in terms of a change of regime, kicking these vagabonds out of office. But I'm sure we'll deal with that later on. However, in response to your question, the magistrate in question right now, Ms. Daly, she is under attack by the PPP regime because she's not doing what they expect or what they want her to do, which is to probably make a decision that will create the impression of an injustice, an obvious injustice against those individuals who are, in my opinion, wrongfully charged. And I'm sure that majority of Guyanese are of that view as well. The PPP regime is on a mission to make it appear that there was something so wrong with the elections and that the 2020 elections and that the coalition, quote unquote, rigged the elections. That's according to the PPP. And so every trick's in the book they're trying, every single trick. That is why the case keeps prolonging and prolonging. They keep changing the game all the time to suit their agenda. And every time they change it, it just doesn't work out. And when it doesn't work out for them, as I would say, their bumps raised, they get upset, they get annoyed. And now they have taken a direct attack target on the magistrate, not just because the magistrate is not ruling on the issue as yet, but because the disrespect towards the magistrate. She is of African descent, and they feel that they can just attack her viciously, and that's what they're doing. It is not to say that they haven't attacked other magistrates or judges in the past, but the way in which they're going after this particular magistrate so that she can have an outcome that will suit their political agenda. They're upset. Anil is upset. Jaxx is upset. Irfan is upset. They're all upset. And so it appears that the Stabroek News cartoonist has joined that bandwagon in spreading that propaganda and at the same time attacking the learned magistrate with what I interpret as a racist cartoon. And we see this racism on the part of the PPP regime. Every single thing when it comes to persons of African descent, they're being targeted, they're being insulted, and they're being treated as though they're third class citizens. The magistrate, the administrator of Borough's School of Arts. All these things we're seeing every single day, and the evidence is building up and building up and building up. At some point in time, it's got to stop. Now, with regards to the cartoon, not only is it racist, but they are putting the magistrate's life in danger. We saw the evidence, what they did way back when with acting chief magistrate Juliet Holder Allen, because Juliet Holder Allen, the acting chief magistrate at that time, didn't do the biddings of the PPP regime. They got upset and forced her off the bench. In this case, with this magistrate that is hearing the so-called elections fraud case, they want her to rule in favor of the corrupt PPP regime. And because she wants to do her job, mind you, that's all she wants to do. They're
Professionally.
forcing her, and they are, watch what's going to happen in this case. They are going to either force her to resign from the bench or remove the case from in front of her. So don't be surprised if the DPP pull the case from in front of her. That's going to be their next move. And they're going to put it in front of a magistrate that will be more lenient towards the PPP and their propaganda.
And so, for the sake of the viewers, what we're talking about, those people who have been charged for alleged rigging, who are these people, for the sake of our viewers? Are they black people, majority black
All,
people?
all of, not majority, all
Oh,
of them. And two of them are senior staffers of the Guyana Elections Commission. They're now no longer there. They've been kicked out. Compliments of the corrupt rigging PPP regime. Those two top officials are one, Keith Lowenfield, the former chief elections officer, who did the right thing by tallying votes that were they had two types of votes: invalid votes and valid votes. When Keith Lowenfield, the chief elections officer then, tallied the vote with valid votes, it showed that the coalition APNU AFC won the elections. However, he was forced to include in his final submission to the chairman of the Elections Commission invalid votes. So you have thousands upon thousands of invalid votes were included and sent to the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission for her to confirm and to say, yes, the elections are over. And with the invalid votes, the thousands of invalid votes, she claimed that the PVP won the elections. But we all know it was fraudulent. The matter was taken to the court by way of elections petitions. The PVP didn't want the elections petitions to be heard. They did every single thing. They fought it in the court. They did everything. Why? Because they were guilty, and they still are guilty of rigging the 2020 general and regional
that
elections.
has come to
Notice,
light. That has
no,
come to light,
yeah,
yeah.
notice, Norman, they kept asking for the SOPs. They want the opposition, the APNU, the PNC. Show y'all SOPs. Show y'all SOPs. The other day, I heard Jack Dale at his so-called press conference. He said, "Where is Mr. I'm sorry. Let me apologize to your listeners for giving that sort of voice. It's very annoying. Where is tell Aubrey Norton to show his SOPs?" Now let's stop there. That's the trickery. That's the corruption in this whole thing. If Jack Dale and the judicial system and GECOM, they're in control of these places. Those are the people who have hard copies of the SOPs. They can reveal the SOPs. They can leak the SOPs. They don't have to depend on Aubrey Norton to show the SOPs. But the reason why Jack Dale and Irfan and Anil, they are reluctant to show the SOPs is because they know once it is open, a can of worms will be open for the PPP, and the world will see that those of us who have been saying from 2020 to now that the PPP rigged the elections, we will see the evidence. And that is what they're afraid of.
We will see. The Attorney General, I understand that the magistrate is on sick leave. She's human, um, and she's in a job and people go sick, people get sick. That's a human thing that is inevitable. I heard that the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Anil Nandlal labeled the adjournment as part of an orchestrated effort to stall justice. How would you respond to Anil Nandlal, the Attorney General?
Well, it's the same attorney general that justify removing law books from the attorney general chambers, and he justified it that it was given to him by the then minority president Donald Ramotar. And if someone who is a lawyer who sits there on the chair of an attorney general is justifying or is trying to say that there's some sort of orchestrated plot. The only orchestrated plot that we know of is that one, the 2020 general and regional elections were rigged, and the other plot is that they seem to be always in favor of Exxon and other companies who are doing business in Guyana. They've been in favor of those companies against the will of the Guyanese people. So if they're talking about plot, that's the only plot that we know of. Of course, if Anil and others in the PPP want to talk about a plot, let them talk about the plot to rig the 2020 elections, which is what majority of people are of the view that the elections were rigged. The evidence is there. I just spoke about the invalid votes, the thousands of invalid votes, the missing thousands of oath of identities, and all these things were missing that they were aware of. So here it is that you have a pot of cook up or a pot of curry or a pot of dal, and you mix it up with all sort of different ingredients to spoil that pot. That is what they did with the elections results, with the votes in the 2020 elections. They put all of the thousands of invalid votes, ghost votes, people who dead long time ago, they voted, mix-up votes, all manner of things they mixed up. And then they forced the chief elections officer, Mr. Keith Lowenfield, to present that as the final outcome to the chairman of the Elections Commission. So if there was a plot, and maybe Anil Nandlal could talk about that plot. So maybe he's onto something when he said there was a plot. The only plot that we know of is the plot to rig the elections, and they were successful at ensuring that the elections were rigged. And now after rigging the elections, the plot, and if Anil is talking about a plot, the only plot that we probably can assume now is that they wanted to make it appear that Keith Lowenfield did something so wrong. They wanted to appear that Miss Roxanne Myers did something so wrong, and the others who they fabricated these charges against them, to put them before the court in order to brainwash their supporters and some members of the international community that, hey, look what happened. These guys attempted to rig the elections, when in fact there's no evidence of that sort. None whatsoever. I am not convinced that there is any evidence. I don't want Anil to tell me that there was a plot. Well, maybe Anil he knows lots about plots, if you know what I mean. But I don't want him to tell me about plots. I don't want Jack Dave to tell me that elections were rigged. I don't want Irfan Ali, who was charged 19 fraud charges, to tell me that the elections were rigged. I don't need Jack Dave, who's accused of bribery and all manner of things and corruption, to tell me that there was, or to tell the nation that there was a plot. No. Let us take it to the court, and mind you, they don't want it to go to the court. The question is why? So, what plot? Maybe Anil should tell us about their plot. And unfortunately, it's been over 4 years now, and those who were charged with so-called election fraud have been and are being persecuted by the PPP regime. That is the plot he needs to be talking about right now.
Mark Benschop here on Voice of the Diaspora, speaking out as usual. I think that, in my opinion, I believe, and many Guyanese believe, I would think that you would share the same opinion, that there is a plot when we're talking about plots. There is a plot to discriminate against African Guyanese women, African Guyanese men. You spoke about the cartoon in the Stabroek News, depicting a male with a gun in his hand and so on. And now this cartoon that is depicting Magistrate Daly. So there seems to be an orchestrated attack on the black male and the black female. We how do you respond to that sort of thing that is happening?
Well, the response is it's pretty obvious. There seems to be an agenda. They have no respect for persons of African descent. They feel that persons of African descent have no value in their eyes. And so, whatever they can do, whether to capture them, to give them a little cash grants, and all these manner of things to control them, that is what they do. And any government who treats a people of a particular ethnic group in that manner is not worth its salt in being in office. So the plot is to destroy the African Guyanese community. They can buy whomever they want to be to buy out, whoever is easily bought, whether they pretend that they carry an audience, whether they pretend that they could pull hundreds of people behind a dancing truck, a musical truck, and all these different things, whether to buy people out by bringing in foreign artists to Guyana and pack them at the stadium and make it look as though it's social cohesion and people are living happily in Guyana, and the only problems are being created by Norman Brown, Rickford Burke, Melissa Atwell, Benschop, and others. You know, that's the message, that's the propaganda they want to spread. And so we become the bad guys by highlighting to the Guyanese people the corruption and the plot to destroy mainly persons of African descent. The evidence is clear. We saw what they did to the people of Mocha, walked into the community, a community that was built by their African ancestors, and destroyed that community, destroyed the livelihoods of people, destroyed businesses, wrecked the people from a psychological standpoint, and they in the PVP saw that as justifiable. They wouldn't go into Port Morant and do that. I'm not saying they should. They wouldn't go in Manripo and do that. I'm not saying that they would. But we see evidence what they have done to Mocha. We have seen the evidence what they have done to the people of Linden and Amelia's ward 2-3 years ago when they bulldozed the people's houses and all manner of things. And they're about to do that again. We see the evidence more recently out in Linden with the flooding. There was no compensation, there was nothing. Just recently some folks in Linden decided to waste their time on an excursion to Georgetown, had to travel all the way to Georgetown to go and meet Mark Phillips. And Mark Phillips, did he talk about compensation? No. All he talked about, oh, they're going to fix the drains and so forth. But the evidence is clear. They're not concerned about the people of Linden. The people of Linden, in the eyes of the PBP regime, do not deserve compensation. And so what they do, and they give the people of Linden no compensation, but they rush into Monrepo to compensate the Polari lady $1 million for a small glass case worth of Polari and other compensations. The evidence is clear. If it's not that clear, well, something is wrong with people who want to accuse us as being the problem, the troublemakers.
The evidence is clear. Mark, and we agree that the evidence is clear. When we move to the other issue of a professional, and a black professional, Mr. Tom, who resigned as administrator of the Borough School of Art, I think. And this happened, we understand, this program understands that that he was racially abused by persons who were at the Borough School of Art outside there, illegal parking, and he had a conversation with them, and he was terribly racially abused. And then one of the persons called the minister, Charles Ramson, the same Charles Ramson who is a known racist government minister, Guyanese, and who had a policeman, an African Guyanese policeman, working at his home. And when the policeman wanted to use the toilet in the property, he told him he had to go across the road. This is Charles Ramson we were talking about. You're not good enough to use the toilet in the house. You need to go across the street in the bushes. And this is a true story. Now, we heard that a call was made to the Minister of youth sport and culture, youth and sports, whatever that is, Ramson is running. And Ramson demanded that Mr. Tom must go down to meet him at the ministry. And when Mr. Tom arrived, the first thing he asked him if he's a security guard. You see, all of us are security guards and we live in basement and so on. Mark, I want you to talk to us about what transpired there from your understanding.
Okay, so there are two Ramsons. There's Ramson Jr. and there's Ramson Sr. The allegations about a security guard at the home was leveled against Ramson Sr. And so just to make that difference, but this is not to say that there's not evidence that the DNA might be the same when it comes to treatment of persons of African descent. Having said that, Charles Ramson Jr., a very controversial, highly controversial individual, still wondering why he was placed there as a minister. But if we are wondering why he was placed there as a minister, we got to wonder why all of the others were placed there as a minister, including Priya Manikchan and all these different people. But putting that aside, to respond to your question about Charles Ramson summoning the professional, Mr. Tom, to his office. So in other words, that's what they do. And they're not the only ones. Ramson is not the only one who does that. I just mentioned what Mark Phillips, the puppet who sits there as prime minister, summoned those big men from Linden to travel all the way to Georgetown to meet with him to talk about flooding, when in fact Mark Phillips, a Lindener, should have been out there in Linden to sympathize and to meet with the people in the community. So the summoning of people is not just confined to the likes of a Ramson. But to respond directly to your question about Ramson summoning Mr. Tom is to show that they are in control. And Ramson, on the other hand, Ramson has done that to show that he is the boss, to walk the man into his office, to ridicule the man, to say that I think the question was asked in the context that he, as an administrator, Mr. Tom, had no authority to question his friends who pulled up there with a SUV, a red SUV. It was basically, Ramson, I'm of the opinion, was basically saying to the guy that you shouldn't be doing that. Leave that for the guard. And so maybe that's why the question of, are you a guard? It was still nevertheless disrespectful. But the young lady who came out of the car and the other person who was in the car, obviously there's a close connection to Ramson. I am concerned about that close connection. I want to know what and why Ramson bumps raised so quickly to call Mr. Tom, the administrator, to ridicule and embarrass him in that manner. I am in full support of Mr. Tom resigning with immediate effect, but it shouldn't go down so lightly. All right-thinking Guyanese should be up in arms against what they have done to Mr. Tom. The question is, are we seeing that? No. Have we seen a comment? Have we seen a comment from Agda? No. Have we seen a comment from the other African organizations and so forth in Guyana? No. The question is, why?
The question is why. Mark Benschop here. I strongly believe that what is happening in Guyana under the PPP is unacceptable, and that the insult towards African Guyanese, professionals especially, and all African Guyanese, must not be condoned. We must rise against that. I strongly believe that Ramson should not have, even in any context, he is not justified in asking a black professional who is an administrator of that institution if he's the guard, and we can take that either way. But let me ask you, Mark, what would you say to Mr. Tom before we move to the next topic? What would you say to Mr. Tom moving forward?
Well, I can just say I understand how he feels. I salute Mr. Tom. He did the right thing. There are lots of other individuals who don't muster up that courage to walk away from situation, especially when they're being belittled. Mr. Tom has set an example for lots of other Guyanese who sit there and they stomach this sort of embarrassment and being ridiculed and insulted and so forth. Mr. Tom did exactly what he did, and I salute him for doing that. Others would just say, oh, they get a pension to protect, they got to make the money, and they take these sort of insults and they move on with their lives. But not Mr. Tom. Mr. Tom is not the regular Uncle Tom. And so congratulations to Mr. Tom. However, we're seeing lots of the silence by those who should be speaking out, those who should be on the side of Mr. Tom to make their voices heard in public wherever it is. And they're just silent on that. I wonder, why are they so silent? Where is the private sector commission that loves to speak out? Where is the Guyana Bar Association that loves to speak out? Where is the Ethnic Relations Commission? Where are these people? Where is ACDA? Where is the African Descendant Organization, Decade of African Descent? Where are they? Is it that they only speak out when it's convenient? And then they remain quiet when it suits their agenda? I don't personally know Mr. Tom, but I feel it for Mr. Tom. He's a professional, and you can't have somebody pulling up in a compound and feel that they have that authority to park wherever and do whatever they feel like without being subjected to the rules.
Call the minister.
And that's just an example how others operate, how others do. They get people when they're pulled in at roadblocks and so forth. Police can't do them anything because they pull their phones out and they call some big one in the government, and that's the end of it. We heard of a story with the controversial Minister of Agriculture. His son was alleged to have been pulled up at a roadblock, and the police did their job. And guess what happened? They were penalized. So it happens every day. And we cannot have a country being run by a bunch of vagabonds in the PPP regime as though it's a cowboy country. It has got to stop.
Well, we've seen it across the board, Mark, whether it's a young man who has a wash bay and had to close down a fish shop, or it's a senior magistrate, there's no respect for them. And the PPP believes that they can crush anyone of African descent. But they have moved forward. They have moved now even into the Amerindian communities. We have seen recently the attack even on a church. Let's take a brief moment to look at this.
Yes, so this is Brother Rondell and his father. And they're coming out of Mabron police station here now. He was put on bail. How much money were you put on bail, Brother Rondell? $20,000 bail. And what was the reason for you to be put on bail?
Court.
He had to go to court for what?
Playing music.
Playing music in church. For playing keyboard. Brother Rondell, can you please come? What did the officer say to you?
I have to go to court because of playing music for church and giving God the praise and thanks.
Yes, sir.
And that's why they said that I get charged and I have to go to court for that.
All right.
Because
Amen.
Mark Benschop, have we become a police state?
Well, have we? And every time the PPP is in office, every time the PPP is in office, these things happen. They control the police force. They get members of the police force to kill for them, murder for them, assassinate for them. And all these things, they get members of the Guyana police force who are part of death squads, killing squads, contract killers. And now I'm not saying that I'm painting the entire police force with this, but every time the PPP regime is in office, these are the things that happen. They get corrupt businessmen who use the police as their tools, as their personal tools, and their guards to do things against people for them, whether it's noise nuisance or whatever it is. In this case, it was said that a guy happens to bear a Muslim last name, whatever it is, and I'm just saying happens to bear. I don't know whether the individual is Muslim or not, but you cannot have a so-called businessman in an area who believes that he can wield power by calling the police to shut down a church. Now, I could understand if it was some big bubble session and the music went over and it was way too loud and whatever. Maybe it's iffy with that. However, but it's a church service. And this so-called businessman decided to wield power. He called the members of the Guyana police force. Maybe he taps them up. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. And so to call them to say, well, look, this church, too much noise. I can't stand this thing, because you can't stand it because the people are praising their God. The people are singing and clapping and worshiping and so forth. And you don't like their form of worshiping. And so you don't care. So you want to shut them down. You call the police, and the idiots in the Guyana police force rushed over, walked into the people's church, and decided that that's what they're going to do. Invite the pastors, invite the other brothers and so forth at the station so that they can charge them and release them on $20,000 bail. I say shame on those vagabonds in the Guyana police force. Forget about that vagabond businessman who called, so-called businessman, but the vagabonds in the police force who have done that is just another example, but about these people don't give a damn about citizens. And that is a direct attack on the Christian community, because the guy who called bears a name of that being a Muslim. I don't know whether he is or not. And so the question is, Norman, would they have gone into a masjid and do that? No. The other question is, would they have gone into a Hindu temple to do that? It is quite obvious. The answer is no. They would be more afraid to walk into a temple. They wouldn't even dare go into a temple to do that. They wouldn't even dare go into a masjid to do that. But guess what? They are going to walk into the little church the people have in the community after a week of frustration, maybe hard work, high cost of living and everything. They decided that they're going to take their problems to the Lord in prayer, to worship, and to relieve themselves of this sort of misery, political corruption that's happening in the country. And so the police and that so-called businessman, they feel comfortable doing that, destroying the people, making their lives miserable. And these are just a few of the things that this corrupt PPP regime, they condone. Now, somebody in the audience might ask, what the government got to do with the... Well, the government has a lot to do with that, because these are the very things they condone. They condone corruption, they condone discrimination, they condone racism, and all sorts of things. Now, that guy from the church, whether it's the pastor, the brother,
The musician,
the musician, right? So you charge a musician, placed him on $20,000 bail. I hope that all the lawyers in Guyana, who just some of them love to jump when there's lights, cameras, and action, that we will see the same energy as we have seen all of the lawyers jumped on to represent, and rightfully so, represent Melissa Atwell's family. Again, rightly so. But what I want to see is the consistency. I want to see the same energy being used to go and represent these folks of indigenous descent. Go and represent them because an injustice was done against them, and sue the state. You cannot walk into a house of worship, a place of worship, stop the music, arrest the people. You didn't give them a warning, because there was no evidence that that they have been given warnings and so forth, but they walked into the people's place of worship, their church, stopped the people from worshiping, arrested the musician, charged the musician, and placed him on $20,000, which is $100 station bail. Now, the swiftness in which the police operated there, when you contrast that with them going after culprits of the PPP regime, some of whom have been accused of rape and all manner of things. They never go and arrest them so swiftly. They never did that. And so if Guyanese eyes are not opening up now to see the sort of despotic regime that they have there in Guyana right now, I don't know when their
So you're
eyes are
saying
going
that
to
that
open up.
young man, the musician, that young Amerindian boy, innocent, you could see the innocence in him, that was praising his God, was treated worse than former member of Parliament Nigel Darnlell.
Now, I'm not saying that. The evidence is saying that. It's
The
quite
evidence is
clear.
saying that.
It's quite clear that how they operate and how they treat citizens of that country. They have gone to from ethnicity, the way they treat persons of African descent, the disrespect they have for person of indigenous descent, and the disrespect for members of the Christian community.
Okay.
We're seeing it. It's happening all the time. Is it going to stop? Under the PPP, no, it's not going to stop. But unless the people take action, and when I say the people take action, is to stand up for their rights and either protest or whatever shape and form.
40 minutes, 28 seconds into the program. Mark, I didn't have the opportunity to ask you about Melly Mel and her family situation where the police would have gone into the parents' home. I think Marcus stepped away there, yeah, and so we will give it a second. And but yes, viewers, I want you to comment and ask
Yeah,
questions.
sorry, man.
Yes, I didn't get the
I'm
opportunity to
I'm
ask.
babysitting too
Yeah, I
much.
know
So
you are busy. It's
yeah,
Sunday. It's not
I'm a babysitter, so I have a
yeah,
problem.
we understand that. The
Yeah,
viewers understand that. We
yeah.
understand that
Thank you.
you have other commitments while you're here on the program. I didn't have the opportunity to talk to you about the police barging into the home, allegedly without a warrant. Melly Mel's mom's home, and traumatizing her son and her mother, who is I think 87 years old or 78 years old. Police went there with guns looking for drugs that they couldn't find and the kinds of stuff. Well, I wanted to ask you what are your thoughts on that and your thoughts on the fake warrant. The fake warrant that was. I mean, we're not supposed to laugh at serious things, but talk to us a bit about how you feel and what are your thoughts about how the police operated there. Was it an attack on Melly Mel because she's exposing the government? She's exposing members of the Guyana police force. Talk to us about that and let us discuss the fake warrant subsequently.
Yep. Again, as we look back at the evidence as to how they operate, and especially the police force, whenever you have a corrupt regime, um, they are not going to, before answering the question directly, they're not going to go and look for Brutus, who is said to be wanted for money laundering. Brutus is a senior officer of the Guyana police force who is accused, mind you, who is accused of money laundering. They're not going to go to look for Mr. Brutus to arrest him and take him down to Soku to question him. They're not going to do that. But what they do, they go after individuals who, most of those individuals are opponents of the PPP regime, or most of the opponents they want to set an example for. So now, I probably, many of us would think that if you living in a society that's where justice should be the order of the day, well, that's a good society to live in. We are currently viewing there in Guyana people living in a society where there's injustices. And unfortunately, the bulk of the injustices are coming straight out of either Office of the President or Freedom House. And you cannot govern a country in that manner. Getting to the question as to the search warrant in question now, we all know how the police force operates, especially under the PPP regime. They hold senior policemen. They hold them at ransom. They get senior policemen to do their dirty jobs, their dirty biddings. We see it all the time. Not only members of the PPP regime do that, even so-called businessmen. We have seen businessmen use the police force for killings and extrajudicial killings, part of that, for assassinations and all these things, to go and collect money and all these sort of things. We have seen so-called business people embarrassed members of the police force by lining up long lines just to collect a little 10,000, a little Christmas gift, and all these manner of things. And so we cannot run a country the way these PPP folks are running the country and expect better to come. Now, with regards to Melly Mel's mother and her 87-year-old grandmother's house, um, in my opinion, it's an obvious target. They can say, unlike what Jack Day wants to say, is that the police, I don't know how he knows that the police didn't know that that was Melly Mel's house, mother's house and grandmother's house. That's where they live. Now, Guyana is a very small society. You know, you're telling me the police, they work in that area with as much as Melly Mel exposed them with their extramarital affairs, who in there with who, and all these sort of things. Melly Mel is not Melly Mel is not a name that is unknown in Guyana, and anybody that is connected, especially Melly Mel's mother and her grandmother. You can't tell me that the police precinct or the police station is in that community and they don't know that hey, there's Melly Mel mother, there's Melly Mel grandmother. So Jack Dale now cannot say that, and here's where they're lying, that they claim that an arrest warrant was sought. Whenever there's an arrest warrant, a legitimate arrest warrant, it has to be done this way. You got to present to the magistrate, or, and unfortunately in Guyana, even a justice of the peace can sign a search warrant, a search warrant, not an arrest warrant. A search warrant can be signed by a justice of the peace. I've had several of those fake search warrants signed by justice of peace at my property. Now, so I know a bit about the fake search warrants. Now, when you, in this case, they claim they approached a magistrate. The magistrate has to know the names of the individuals. And during that process, you can't tell me that the police weren't aware that, hey, by this Melly Mel's mother house. Not to say that because it's Melly Mel's mother house or grandmother's house where they live, mean that a search warrant should not be issued. But they knew ahead of time what they were up to. They also knew that their agenda is to intimidate Melly Mel's family in Guyana. So their objective was to intimidate the family. The objective was to persecute the family. But somewhere along the line, they changed their mind. They changed their mind because they knew that there was going to be a backlash, that members of the public is probably going to know that they're persecuting Melly Mel's mother and her grandmother. For obvious reasons. The PPP is notorious to that. They have a history of going after political opponents. If they can get the political opponents to jail them, if they can get the political opponents to assassinate them, kill them, murder them, they are going to go after their families. Again, I am speaking from personal experiences too. You know, I'm not just talking here with water in my mouth.
But we will talk a bit about
they
that
went after my
closing.
family.
Yes,
They did all sort of things. But the search warrant, it doesn't look authentic. It doesn't at all, because it is there are things on that search warrant that is not consistent. Now,
dates and all of that,
in order for one second, please, Mr. Brown. In order for a search warrant to be issued, you must have probable cause. You must have good reason. And any magistrate who would have gone to a proper law school to become a lawyer, then subsequently a magistrate, know that the police, or should know that the police cannot come just like that and say, Magistrate Brown, sign this search warrant for me. You have to have a good reason for a search warrant to be signed. And if there is no proper reason for a search warrant to be signed, then you wouldn't sign that search warrant. Which leads me to another concern that I have, and I've had this for a while now. Why is it that justice of the peace, they're not legal minds, they're not lawyers, they're not magistrates, they're not judges, but why is it that they are given that power to sign a search warrant to be executed? In the case back in 2009, when they raided my property for an illegal registration, they didn't have a proper search warrant. They were asked to present a search warrant. They didn't have one. And so they belatedly went to a justice of the peace on Lombard Street, a man by the name of Tallman Taylor, and I believe his name was Singh or something like that. I later met the guy, and he said, "Man, Mark, me and your family, you are my cousin from quarantine. If me even know that it was you that." The man said he wouldn't sign. He's dead now. The man said he would not have signed that search warrant. And the point is I'm making, that is what they do. And so the police force is lying on this particular situation because they want to be vindictive against Melly Mel. And so they are going to go after her mother, her grandmother, and, God forbid they go after the girl's son. God forbid.
But do you believe that magistrate Wonder Fortune signed that warrant? Or is an old thing? I don't understand it, because the warrant looked like it came out of Palestine in a war zone, and it's just scratches and bruises and wrong dates and all the kinds of stuff. Is that really a warrant when you look at it?
Well, that's the PPP. They don't care about wrong dates. They don't care about whether the search warrant looks like it comes out of Palestine or wherever it is, war areas. They don't care. Their only agenda is to do what is necessary to go after their opponents. And that is why their opponents got to be brave, continue to be brave, and stand up and suck it to the PPP regime and all of their enablers. So,
and say whether she signed that warrant or not, in your opinion.
I can say to you that if I was a magistrate, I would have been coming forward to say, not in my name, I didn't sign a search warrant. And then they came to me with a search warrant for a different place, a different location. In the case of when they searched my property for an illegal registration, which, mind you, I was not guilty of. This was in 2009. I was not guilty. I ain't guilty of that at all. Really, I'm not guilty. So it was a day when I picked my son up, Ryan, from school. We were going to celebrate his birthday. I remember that. It was October 29 when they arrested me. I spent 3 nights in the lockup just for something that didn't warrant that. And so the point is, the PPP regime doesn't care. They will put their policemen, their surrogates in the Guyana police force. And unfortunately, at that time, it was a guy that I thought better from. It was Ramson, who acted as commissioner of police and went after the PPP regime, that did the dirty biddings of the PPP regime to come after me with a fake search warrant. And so I am saying, from a position of strength and experience, that is exactly what they have done to Melly Mel's grandmother and her mother. Now, as it pertains to the magistrate, Miss Wonder Fortune, who have had quite a traumatic period in her life, the death of her mom and so forth, the brutal death of her mom and so forth. So I can understand that the magistrate knows what trauma is like. And then when they go after political opponents, it becomes traumatic for not the political opponent, but for the political opponent's family members as well. So the magistrate should know about traumatic periods and traumatic situation. And I am not sure that the magistrate would want to be involved in anything, any acts that are questionable, that appears to be on the grounds of persecuting someone or deliberately going after that. So I would say that the magistrate, unfortunately, is caught up in this web, And whether she's going to make a statement or not, it's just a matter of time to see it. But because of how the PPP operates in Guyana,
People are
I doubt the
hesitant.
magistrate.
Yeah, people.
I doubt
Yeah,
the
yeah.
magistrate.
Professionals and otherwise are hesitant.
Yeah.
Mark
But
Benschop.
we all know. We all know what the PPP tried
We
to do with their hooligans in the Guyana police force. Mind you, Norman, the officer in charge, ASP Singh, is no stranger to controversy. There was a allegation out in Borbice where he took the village of Wim police station, allegedly took 100 or requested $100,000 to finish up a statutory rape charge against
he's
someone.
corrupt.
100,000.
He's very corrupt.
That's the allegation. The matter was brought before the Judicial Service Commission, right? This is the same magistrate who has had lots and lots of other controversial
But
issues
Barack
and
has called him
allegations leveled
racist,
against
and there
him.
seems to be a lot of evidence that he is
Now,
is
whether
racist.
the racist or whether there's racism or not, I'm just talking about evidence of corruption.
Corruption. Yeah.
It is quite easy to say racist, but I'm speaking about a track record of serious allegations of corruption by that ASP Singh. There was allegation of corruption when he was at the narcotics branch. Allegedly, cocaine went missing, marijuana went missing, and all these different things. When he allegedly beat up another guy at a club that he supposedly had some sort of interest in, and there's allegations of trafficking in women at that club. So these allegations again, I repeat, are serious, and I want to focus on the seriousness of those allegations as opposed to just jump up on a mountaintop and say, "Oh, he's racist." This doesn't mean that maybe he's not racist, because he's alleged to have chased a African
Yeah,
Guyanese police
we can't treat
man
that
out of
lightly.
a
We
yard.
can't treat that lightly.
Yes,
Racism
so
is rife in
no,
Guyana,
I'm not.
and it's fueled
I'm
by
not saying it should
yes.
be.
No, I'm not saying you're
Yeah,
saying that,
I'm
but
not saying
I
that it should
don't.
be treated
No,
lightly.
no, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying that we should not even hint as if it is not something that is eating away at the soul
No, no,
of the
but
nation.
Norman,
That
it is obvious. The racist agenda is obvious of the PPP regime. With respect to Mr. The ASP Singh, I was speaking specifically about serious allegations during his time as a member of the Guyana Police Force. And this is not to say that
the fact, Mark,
we
the
shouldn't treat
fact is
racism.
that he gets away with those things and remains as an ASP because of racism in the PPP. He's Indo-Guyanese. He's racist towards
Because of corruption.
because of
We're not
racism
touching
and
one second.
corruption. Yeah,
No, we're not touching racism now. It is because of corruption. And now let me ask you this:
the
they're
corruption is
not going
allowed
after
because there is
one second.
racism
They're not
exists.
going after Brutus. Brutus is a senior cop who's accused and alleged of money laundering. They're not going after him. Is it because of racism? He's a black guy. Look at all of the allegations against the acting commissioner of police who is squatting in that position. It's not racism that they're keeping him there. It is because of what he can do for them when it comes to allegations of corruption. And that's my point.
Uh, yeah. I'm not disputing what you say. I just strongly believe that that the racism is worse than the corruption because it enables the corruption. I honestly believe that Dharmalal gets away with things because he's Indo-Guyanese, he's racist, the PPP is racist, and whether he's corrupt or not, that corruption is enabled and
Mr. Brown,
supported because
Mr.
of
Brown, I
racism.
agree. I
But
agree, sir. I agree, Mr. Brown, that there is racism when the pattern of the PVP is corruption. You mentioned Dharamlal
I'm not
and the
disputing
allegations,
that.
one second, and the serious allegations of rape, and that the PVP defended him. Now, they didn't defend him on the issue just because of racism. They defended him because that is their pattern. Now, what
No. The
would you say when,
pattern.
one second,
I
what
don't.
would you say
Mark,
when
I beg to
one
differ.
second, Mr.
I beg to differ. Yeah.
Mr. Brown, 1 second, Mr. Brown. Thank you so much. 1 second. Right.
Go ahead.
Now, I was just about to make another point to you. Do you recall that at one point in time, a few years ago, there was a sitting commissioner of police who was accused of rape and who was charged with rape? And who defended him? Who caused the charges to be withdrawn? And that same man continued to be the commissioner of police. Who did that? The PPP. Jack Deere was president of that country, and they did everything within their powers to defend that black man. That guy, that
No,
corrupt commissioner of police, defended
they
him.
defended
Not on the issue of race, but on the issue of
of corruption.
corruption.
I'm just saying that to enable the racism to exist, to enable the PPP to remain a racist party in which they can take African Guyanese who will do their bidding, professional or otherwise, who will uphold that racist regime. If a black man gives up his soul, his integrity, his identity, that is a greater form of racism, because here is a black man who's stripping himself of what and who he is really, to bow and genuflect before a racist cabal to do their bidding, that accentuate racism at the highest level. And so the argument that a black man was defended, what sort of black man was defended? Let me say this to you quickly, Mark. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, because corruption is rife, corruption is powerful, and so I'm not really disputing that. Let me say this quickly to you, and you mentioned those who getting bans and so on to frolic down the streets of New York and other places. A young woman sent something to me this morning, sorry, where perhaps one of the latest soul sellers was at the cricket thing, the CPL thing, or whatever you call Amazon game. And NCN took a photo of that young man. That young man took the photo and he put it on his page. He just put the photo up at the game. And an executive in NCN, an executive of NCN, did not inbox him or call him on the phone or anything. The executive went under the photo, Mark Benschop. A young woman said, Mr. Brown, I was very upset at you or whatever, but now I realize what you're saying. She said that the executive of NCN went under the photo on Facebook and said, hello, you need to put that is NCN, take the photo out. You need to put it there. As God is my witness, the evidence is there. And the young man had to now put NCN at the bottom of the photo, say, yeah, it's NCN. We know why. And so I'm not arguing, and I know that's a bit of a diversion, but I agree with you 100% that corruption is rife, and it's perhaps, yes, the big thing in the government of Guyana. But that corruption is enabled because of racism. It's allowed because of racism. Jack Deere is allowed to be vice president because of racism. The PPP and their cronies and their friends and others are allowed to get contracts because of racism. It is the racism that fuels the corruption. It is the racism that fuels the corruption. And that is why black people are not getting projects who are qualified and all that kinds of stuff. That's why black professionals are not are being treated the way they're being treated. It is a racist regime, it's a corrupt regime, but the corruption is today enabled by racism. And until you root out the wicked racists in the PPP, you will not see corruption being dealt with. You know, and so I'm sorry to become so animated. I agree with you 100%. Mark Benschop here on Voice of the Diaspora. Mark, you have experience, in closing, you have experienced persecution, and I want the young people, so many people have tuned into this program today. A lot of young people are tuning in. And Mark, some of them don't know the history. They believe that this new government and the PPP before, a few years ago, before the 5 years of the coalition, is all that it was. And it is. But you have experienced the atrocities that the PPP can visit on any human being. for the sake of the young people, I'm sorry that I couldn't find the footage of you leaving prison and so on, but for the sake of the young people in Guyana, for them to understand that this is not a yesterday thing. This is not a touting of a one Guyana thing that can, brush aside the years, the decades of the consistent and constant actions of the PPP towards African Guyanese and persons who do not bow to their mandate. You have gone through serious persecution at the hand of the PPP as an innocent man. Talk to us about that.
Yes, thank you. But quickly, if I can just head back to the NCN, I'm actually glad that
Yes.
that incident happened, and there's a reason why I'm happy that it has happened. You spoke about the NCN and an official and so forth. Lots of officials at NCN who do not have sorry about that. Lots of officials at NCN who do not have any sort of experience or professionalism or decorum, and so for that official to behave in that manner, it is not surprising at all. But I'm glad that it has happened because it exposes the NCN and their hypocrisy to want to own something that they claim belongs to them, and that to embrace copyright infringement. Say, look, that's ours. Put that it
No,
is
no,
from
they
us.
wanted to show that they own the young man. They wanted to show that
Not,
the young man, they wanted to show that the young man is now aligned. You
well,
know,
I think what has happened there, they want to show, they want credit
they
for the
want
image.
credit. Yes,
Good.
yes,
And
yes.
so
I
I'm
agree.
speaking strictly from the
From a
copyright
professional, yeah,
standpoint,
corporate, yeah, yeah.
and they want people to know, and they want that whoever the person is to put that image is an NCN
CN image,
image.
yeah, yeah.
Now, this is, I say that I'm glad that it has happened because it exposes the NCN and what they're about. The same NCN not so long ago infringed the rights of a singer, a Guyanese singer by the name of Jaxx. They played her music without giving any credit. They played her music without seeking her permission to do that. And so that is why Jaxx has sued them for 1.2 or so million dollars
So the
in U.S. court.
the one thing that was sued is NCN, is a part of NCN, because it's called a
Yeah,
one.
they're
Yeah, it's a part of NCN.
Yeah,
Okay, I
they're
didn't know
all
that.
part of the network there,
Network.
and
Okay, cool.
I'm glad that they've been sued because they've been infringing on the copyright of so many Guyanese. And kudos to Jaxx, who now I just recently found out about 30 minutes ago, and it came about as a result of that 1.2 million dollars suit that Jaxx is my long lost cousin. I hope she gets the money and she can share it with her nice cousin Mark. But in terms of the persecution against me, the evidence is clear, it's out there. Apart from the treason charge, I was charged with the highest charges in the land: treason, sedition. A lot of people don't know that. And Jack Dale, they try to defend themselves with this cybercrime law that it's, and try to blame the coalition to some extent, maybe. But that they have never charged people with sedition, and it's old, it's antiquated, and so forth. The same PPP regime under Jack Dave's presidency, not only was I charged with treason, I was charged with sedition, I was charged with attempt to commit murder against a sitting commissioner of police, Larry Lewis. All of these trumped up charges against me just to get at me. The dozens of other charges, politically motivated charges from illegal protests and all these things. One particular charge that came to mind recently was in 2002 on February 14th. I appeared in front of acting chief magistrate Juliet Hola Allen, and the charges were that I assaulted 3 cops. You wouldn't believe who the 3 cops that they claim that I beat up. I beat up a RoboCop. I beat up
Fraser.
Leon Fraser,
I
and I
read.
beat up Gangster. Those 3 notorious individuals in the Black Cloaks police that those days, they claimed that
Most
me,
feared.
me,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
beat them up. And when I appeared in front of Acting Chief Magistrate Juliet Holder Allen on the 14th of, well, it would have been the 13th of February 2002, sorry. It was the 13th day of the month. And according to Stabroek News, they say this is Benschop's 6th appearance in front of the magistrate for the month. The 6th appearance for the month. It means every time they would lock me up, I'll come out, I will go back. They will lock me up, I'll come out, and I'll go back. And the month had just started, and that was just my 6th appearance. And because I refused to buckle up, I refused to put my hands up and surrender because of what they were doing to me and persecuting me. And not only me, my family. When I was at Camp Street, they broke into our house. They ransacked the house. They tied my then wife up. They put big guns on my son's head. Ryan, at that time, he was 2.5 years old. So the evidence of persecution, it is there. They took away computers. They took away, at that time, they had computer disk. They took away all these things looking for evidence, claim that I'm some sort of, I work for some sort of outside agency or whatever the case may be, all manner of evidence they were looking for. So the persecution is not that known to many people.
Most of the 5 years in solitary confinement. That's quite serious.
Yeah.
You spent of the 5 years, you spent a lot of time in solitary confinement for no particular reasons.
No, for a reason, and for a reason. For standing up against a racist, a corrupt, and a discriminatory regime. So it was for a reason. And despotic regimes, corrupt regimes like the PPP, they don't like people who stand up against them. They will try to kill them, as what happened under the PPP regime with Ronald Waddle. They assassinated Ronald Waddle. As what happened under Donald Ramotar's presidency, they assassinated Courtney Crummy Wing. Hundreds of other persons were slaughtered. And those people who were killed, they like to describe them as criminals. So here's the thing that is so hypocritical of the PPP
they want to
regime.
Investigate
They
themselves.
formed death squad. They formed death squads with members of the Guyana police force and former members of the Guyana police force and corrupt businessmen, right? So they form a squad or squads with criminals claiming that they're going after criminals. And then that's exactly what happened in the crime wave. And I ask this question here to your listeners. Since Jack Dave is interested, suddenly he's interested in an investigation. Why over 80, commission of inquiry? Why is it that over 18 years now, a sitting minister of his government was killed along with two siblings of his family, the dog, of course, and a security, right? Why is it that Jack Deere never initiated an investigation into that? But let me tell you guys this. The reason why the reason why Jack Deere is suddenly talking about a commission of inquiry, it is because all of the witnesses have been eliminated. All of the witnesses have been killed. And so the people that will be turning up as any commission of inquiry, it will be hearsay. Somebody tell me this or somebody tell me that. Hearsay. But you think Jack Deere don't know why Saturday saw a minister of his own government was killed? He got to tell people what he knows. He got to take a polygraph test to tell the nation what he knows and to tell the relatives of Mr. Saturday Saw why that minister was killed. He also got to take a polygraph test.
The family never got
to
any
tell
justice.
People that no justice at all. Just like Ronald Waddle's family, no justice. Just like Courtney Crummy Wing family, no justice. The witnesses were killed. One of the guys who was accused of killing Crummy Wing was burnt in that Camp Street fire. So a lot of corruption happened. And this leads me now to some folks in the audience might say, well, the coalition, the coalition government didn't do anything. They had a chance. They should have okay, fair enough. I too was a bit impatient with the coalition government because I'm big on human rights. I'm big on fighting against injustices against people. right? That's my passion. That's my area. And so I was after the coalition to ensure that they bring justice, to the family. The family deserved justice. Lots of young men were killed. Lots of young men are still missing. Lots of young men were tortured under the PPP regime. And so, as it pertains to Ronald Waddell's assassination, and Courtney Crummy, as fresh as it was then when the coalition took over, by the time you got there, guess what? Witnesses disappeared, um, evidence burnt. And so when it's not like the coalition didn't attempt to investigate, but every time you run into a brick wall, they run into a brick wall. Maybe they were afraid to come out and tell you guys in the public that witnesses disappeared, the witnesses were killed, evidence destroyed, and there was basically nothing to go on. They put the charge on a guy named Gray Boy. Gray Boy, in my opinion, Gray Boy probably knew what went on, whether he was the trigger man or not. But there was Grey Boy, who seemed to be the only scapegoat. But the PPP is notorious of destroying evidence, and they are notorious of ensuring that witnesses are eliminated. And so almost all of the witnesses were eliminated, including those who were slaughtered by members of the joint services. They were slaughtered at Lindo Creek. Those miners were slaughtered, and every witness around them was slaughtered. And those people who are responsible for the deaths of those miners at Lindo Creek, some of them are today serving in the highest positions of the Guyana Defense Force and the Guyana Police Force, who are alleged to have been part of that. And so, under the stewardship of then Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force, Gary Best, who is now very close to the PMC. I think under his stewardship there, when he was commandor of the Guyana Defense Force, they did an internal investigation, of which at that time, young cadet officer Blanham, who is now the controversial crime chief in Guyana, they were part of a so-called internal investigation. And where that led to, maybe Gary Best, an executive of the PNC now, should tell the nation
Well, I will
what
ask him.
transpired during the
I will
process.
ask him. Mark Benschop, you're speaking out this evening and people are listening. So many people are tuning in. Mark, I know that we're pressed for time, but I have to ask you this before you give your closing remarks. GECOM, I want to ask you if the PPP can lose an election with the current confabulation of GECOM. What are your thoughts on what is happening at GECOM? The lack of things that are needed, a new voters list, biometrics, and so on. And GECOM as it is, if we go into the elections in 2025, is there any chance for a removal of the PPP through free and fair elections? And then we get
Well,
your closing remarks on that.
GECOM is a corrupt nest. It has been under the the PPP has been under the PPP since 1992. And when you look at the pattern of voting, it all become questionable. Put aside the 1992 elections when President Carter was there and so forth, we go to the 1997 elections again. Massive corruption and irregularities on the part of the PPP regime, as we all know that the elections were vitiated, and it pointed on corruption. And Claudette Singh was the judge in that matter, and it pointed that the PPP squatted in office for four or so years. In 2001, a lot of people don't know that as a result of Claudette Singh's decision to vitiate the elections, Jaxx had to call fresh elections. In 2001, March, we had fresh elections, and the results again were questionable. This I said to President Jimmy Carter, who at that time was in Guyana, and requested a meeting with me on the matter. And I told him exactly what was happening, and this was held at the Pegasus. Um, I told, well, the President Jimmy Carter requested a meeting with me. I didn't request, and I just want you guys to know, I didn't request a meeting with him, an audience, mind you, with him. And I told him exactly what were transpiring then, and those things that I told him then are the very same things that are happening 20 plus years after. So now GECOM is corrupt. It has always been corrupt. It has always been fraudulent when the PPP is in office. The PPP is notorious in cooking the books. And they have to cook the books because if you look from 1997, they support base, the support that the PPP gets at every election starts to go down by 10,000, 15,000. So in 1997 to 2001, it dropped about 16,000, 15 to 16,000. It dropped further in the elections in 2006. That is why they had to rig the elections also in 2006. And rigging it was obvious to everybody because to make it look nice, they stole a seat from Region 10. And they stole that seat from the AFC, and they Sam Hines squatted in that seat for 5 years. They knew that they stole that seat from GECOM, from the AFC in Region 10. They knew it. They accepted that the results weren't accurate. But what they said, look, the CEO, Chief Elections Officer, and the chairman then, I believe was Serge Bali, they said, hey, wait a minute. We know that it was wrong, but take us to court. The AFC took them to court by way of an elections petition. It got nowhere. Elections petitions do not go anywhere in Guyana. The only time an elections petition, which was the Esther Pereira petition, was the 1997 elections. And the opposition, the PNC, won the elections petition, thanks to Claudette Singh. They won, and that was the only successful elections petition ever in the history. Maybe 1960 or so, or 50 something, they had another one where the PPP attempted to steal a seat in MacDoom. Mr. Hamilton Green could talk more about that. But when it comes to rigging elections at GECOM, the PPP, they're masters at that. Maybe that explains why they put Gokul Budu back there, because maybe they feel strongly that Gokul Budu can deliver for them. They want somebody to deliver for them. Look at Brigadier Joe Singh, retired. He was chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission. He ran away like a little pussycat because of the corruption right there in a GECOM. And so to answer directly again your question, I am concerned that the likes of Gokul Budu they're back there at GECOM. With those guys at GECOM, I am not optimistic of fair and transparent process at GECOM. I am just not comfortable with
Mark Benschop here on Voice of the Desk. Mark, we will have your closing remarks. We've gone over time, but I know that the viewers are tuned in and they are, listening keenly to you. The one Guyana, wrap it up in your closing remarks. The one Guyana.
The one what?
Mantra, the one Guyana mantra that's being
No.
that is being pushed to young people in Guyana.
There's no one Guyana. There's no one Guyana. There is a one corrupt PPP regime, and that is what it is about. And the PPP wants to make Guyana a North Korea or maybe a Putin style Guyana. It's got to stop. And the way that these things can stop is if we have leaders and we have those in the opposition believe in protest. We cannot find excuses not to have protest. And so one of the things that will stop the PPP is protest, mass protest. It is their constitutional rights. Nobody should take that away from you. And leaders or members of parliament or opposition MPs or whatever should never be afraid of protest. They should never be afraid of standing up for their rights.
The era for protest has passed. Aubrey Norton, the leader of the opposition, said that he's going down another road. They will not.
Well, while Mr. Norton is going down another road, we can just say, all right, you go down that road, but the majority of people are going down another road. I don't know why Dr. Hines, if he said that the era for protest is gone, I don't know what he means by that. Dr. Hines protested during
that governments around the world they're using a different sort of method now, and
Well, I don't know what method that he's talking. The era for protest has never disappeared. If you check out how governments are removed by mass protests, it never gets out of hand, never gets out of hand. And so, for Dr. Hines to say that, assuming that he said that, I don't know why. I recall Dr. Hines has joined us on whenever he traveled to Guyana. There are some occasions that he has joined us in protest. He was there in
he said
2012 in
governments are not
Linden.
removed by that sort of method anymore. That's what he
No,
actually said.
it's just if he said that, it's just a lame excuse in order to not to have protests right now. It's a lame excuse, assuming that he said that, but I doubt that he
He said
meant
something
that.
of the sort. I don't want to misquote him, but he said something of the
Yeah,
sort.
I doubt that Dr. Hines would say that because he is passionate about protests as I am and as a few others are. And I can talk about protests. I know what protests do to corrupt regime like the PPP. I was there. I know what it did to them in Linden because there were others who were afraid of the protest in Linden, and it was people like myself had to stop to tell them there will be protest in Linden. I've noticed some of them jumping up and they don't like protest or they were part of protest. No, they were forced to be part of protest. And sometimes you wonder whether, of course, people get the government they deserve and the people get the opposition they deserve too. So that's my
Mark
closing remarks.
Mark
I hope
Benschop.
people will continue to be optimistic, and that we will get a change of government in 2025 with real leadership, proper leadership. And that can only be done with a strong coalition. One party can do it. I noticed Nigel, you said that the AFC can win an elections on its own. I don't know what part of the bed Mr. Nigel you slept on the night before he made that statement. But it
Are
is
you saying
just a
that it's a wild
confused statement.
statement made by the leader of the AFC?
It is more than just a while. It's an irresponsible statement. The AFC, everybody knows that cannot win an elections on its own. And don't confuse the people. Nigel is my friend, but he's wrong. The AFC doesn't have that sort of support. The AFC has been badly injured, and luckily they got a lot of seats under the coalition. It was Christmas time for the AFC under the coalition that they got so many seats and ministries, and the people have not forgotten Charandas and what Charandas did. The people have not forgotten them, and it's difficult for anybody. It's strange that anybody, including Mr. Nigel Hughes, would say that the AFC can win an elections on its own. Maybe the AFC can win an internal AFC elections on its own, but the AFC cannot at this point
Well,
in time win a national
we will have to
elections on
ask
its own.
Sherrod about that. We'll have to ask Sherrod about that. But Mark, thank you so much for taking time out. We went over the hour by 27 minutes. We can talk all night. You have been a mountain of knowledge here, and so many people are listening to you, and I think that they understand and they've grasped everything you have said. It is a pleasure having you on this program. It will always be a pleasure having you on this program. The struggle continues. We will hold hands in unity as freedom fighters and activists, and we want young people to know that we have walked that journey, not a short distance, but
And I thank you so much, Norman. But I say to people that I like to be described as just me, Mark Benschop,
yeah.
and all of the things about
No, but
freedom fighter and all.
you
I'm
have
just
to.
Mark
Well,
Benschop.
you're humble. You're very humble. But I want to say to you that the indentation that you've made on Guyana's, history in terms of activism and being an example and being a consistent fighter must not go down, in some humble sort of outpouring that you don't want the world to know. People must know the efforts that
Well,
have been made by
let me just try
fighters.
to. Thank you so much. Let me just and I applaud those who are brave enough to fight and those who are on the ground. And I take this opportunity to those who even blog to say, keep the blogging up, increase the blogging. Do not be afraid. Keep commenting, keep blogging, keep sharing these links whenever we're on. And to those who are on the ground, people like Rhonda Lane and others, those few folks who go out every week in front of GECOM, I salute them, I applaud them. And for those brave politicians in the opposition, there's still a few of them. I applaud them as well. I just wish more can get out of their air-conditioned offices and their vehicles and hit the streets and start standing up and representing the people. And let me say a special hello to the people of Linden. They are suffering, a different kind of suffering, added to the high cost of living, the unemployment rate. But the people of Linden, there is no compensation for them with the floods. People have lost millions of dollars. This corrupt, racist PPP regime, they have turned a blind eye on the people of Linden, including Mark Phillips, who in his meeting, I'm told, didn't want to address the issue of compensation, but just to go and clean drains and to fix some drainage system in Linden. That's all they're concerned about. The fact that they do not want to compensate the people of Linden for the flood, it further reveals and exposes the PPP for what they are, racist and corrupt. But yet they jumped in a flash to give Auntie out in Monrepo $1 million for a small puri stand. But the people in Linden have to continue to suffer under this corrupt PPP regime. And those who are on the ground fighting, I say kudos, we are with you. And those who are on social media as well, whether they have a platform as social media influencers and so forth and so on, kudos to them. You guys are on the right track, and we will make this thing happen in 2025. There might be political differences among the small opposition, the opposition parties. We might not see eye to eye on every issue, just like I don't see eye to eye on Nigel Hughes saying that the AFC can win an elections outright. It doesn't mean that I'm against them, I'm against Nigel or no, I'm not. It just means that I disagree with that statement, and I have to say it publicly.
Right.
However, though, Norman, the only party that has it right now in the opposition to win an elections outright, if it's done properly, is the PNCR. And that's a fact. If it's done properly, with proper leadership and real soldiers around them. That's all.
Mark Benschop,
not the
I was hoping that we would have seen Nigel here comforting this young man.
Yes, so this is Brother Rondell and his father. And they're coming out to Mabron police station here now. He was put on bail. How much money were you put on bail, Brother Rondell? $20,000 bail. And what was the reason for you to be put on bail?
Court.
You had to go to court for what?
Playing music.
Playing music in church. For playing keyboard. Brother Rondell, can you please come? What did the officer say to you?
I have to go to court because of playing music for church and giving God the praise and thanks.
Yes, sir.
And that's why
Mark Benschop, thank you for being here, a voice of the diaspora.
I
know the AFC is trying to get the Amerindian votes. I know the AFC is trying to get the
Norman, not only, it's okay. That's what political parties do. That's what politicians do. They try to get votes. Maybe those at Congress Place should do that too, try to get votes. And so we can't blame Nigel for trying to get votes. However, I would want to see lawyers.
I wasn't blaming him.
Yeah, lawyers in the opposition to go out and be at the side of this young man. A Roysdale Ford, who I don't know where since Roysdale ran for leadership, like he gone in a carny, we need to see these guys.
That, man. The man is representing Melly Mills, Mormon.
Well, other than that, people putting
Joe Harmon is a part of the battery of lawyers.
Yeah, but
also,
but we gotta be. Remember Roysdale and Amans. One second, sir. Roysdale and Amans and these folks want to be leaders. Now, because you get injured in one elections mean that's it. You got to still come out and fight. Look, I've spent 5 years in solitary confinement. As soon as I came out, guess what I did? I started right back again. Fight them, fight the corrupt PPP regime. And that's what fighters do. That is what people want to see their leaders do. People want to see their leaders fight. People don't want to see their leaders get locked up, arrested or detained for 10 minutes, and then when they come out, they throw in the towel and say, that's it. they're no longer protesting. They're no longer. I don't know what's happening. But thank you so much for your time today, though,
And I
Mr.
thank
Brown.
you so much for taking time
Yeah.
out to be on this program. We have had a long conversation. We were supposed to do an hour. I think we've gone into more than an hour and a half. Mark Benschop,
Yep.
it's been a pleasure. It will always be a pleasure. Continue the struggle. And tomorrow you will be having your program in the evenings. Loads of people that are watching here follow your program. I urge them to urge others to continue to follow your work, and as we unite as activists across the board, that this unity will illuminate amongst our people, and so that we can play a part where the opposition is not doing it, to inspire and influence others to ensure that the PPP regime is removed. Thank you so much for being here
Thank
on
you.
Voice of the Diaspora.
Thank you, sir.
Dreddy got a job to do, and he's got to fulfill that mission. To see his hurt will be their greatest ambition. But we will survive in this world of competition, 'cause no matter what they do, Dreddy keep on coming through. And no matter what they say, Dreddy did it every day. Natty Dread rise again through the mystics of tomorrow.
Natty Dread rise again.
Have no fear, have no sorrow. All in all you see a one is to fight against the Rasta man. So they build their world on great confusion, to force on us the devil's illusion. But the stone the builder refused shall be the head cornerstone. And no matter what game they play, we've got something they can never take away. Something they can never take away. It's the fire, the fire that's burning down everything. Feel the fire, the fire. Only the birds have their wings. No time to be deceived. Yes, you should know and not believe. Just say this judgment would never be with water. No water can put out this fire, this fire, this fire, this fire. I got you, so ride not to ride. Go there, Dreddy, go there. Now the fire is out of control. Panic in the city, wicked weeping for their souls. Everywhere the fire is burning, destroying and melting their gold, destroying and wasting their souls. So ride, natty, ride. Got that Dreddy, got that. Now the people gather on the beach, and the leader tried to make a speech, but the dread again tell them that it's too late. Fire is burning, men, pull your own way. Fire is burning,